So, good evening and welcome to the OWASP Tirana Chapter 2026. This is the second event for our chapter. You can find all the information in the link here. We have a web page, dedicated web page. We usually publish all the information that we need to share with you. By the end of this week, you'll find also the next event, which will be on quantum security. So, it'll be also very interesting. We also have some social, we are present in the social media. We have our YouTube channel, so where you can find also the recording of all the talks. So please sign up in order to receive all the information you might need. As well, we have a meetup. As you know, most of you, I think, are interested in the meetup page. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mario Gonzales, one of the chapter leaders. The other chapter leader is here with me, Kreshnik Rexha. And today, so important things first. Basically, there will be a rough moment. Actually, we have two prizes. The first one is a pair of Meta's Ray-Ban sunglasses, sponsored kindly by Robotech Albanian. So the prize at the end will be delivered by Robotech. And the second prize, which is Raspberry Pi 5, sponsored by Kineton. So how it works? You just need to scan the QR code, register with your name and email as well.
No, just your name. We will not use your data for anything else specifically at the end. Make sure that you are in the room when we do this, because if you're not in the room,
yeah, that's important.
You won't get it.
At the end of this event, we will speed the wheel.
The Wi-Fi is tied.
You need to connect with the entire Wi-Fi to work?
No, any Wi-Fi should do. It's a Google form.
It's not working.
Try there in the back. Have you tried?
I tried it.
We already have 9 people. So they will be up during the next 2 hours. If you can't stay up,
Okay, I will.
just do it. Don't worry, we will add you manually if you can't.
I will display the QR code also at the end of my quick introduction of OWASP. So maybe you can check it again later. So this is the title of this event, of today's event, is Supply Chain, the Achilles heel of the modern economy. It seems a bit exaggerated, but it's not, because especially also with the EU regulation, I don't know if you know about the CRA, the Cyber Resiliency Act, and all the compliance that all the manufacturers should satisfy somehow, starting from September 26th. The reporting.
So actually, you start reporting on the 11th of June 2026, so you've got 4 months. In September, it becomes enforceable. And in December 2027, when the fines kick in. We'll go through that in a bit. But yes, this year has become entering force in all member states if you want to sell in the European Union.
And actually, we feel it also from the industry. So I work in the automotive industry, and we have vendors, OEMs that are already worried about, I mean, especially for them that produce software, are worried about being compliant. It's not an easy path. I think that the Cyber Resilience Act will create a lot of, let's say, troubles for the manufacturers. Okay, so the agenda for today, I mean, after this quick introduction, will be a leak, which, I mean, I don't know if you...
Signal the time, okay? This is...
presentation about open source, pipelines, AI, and supply chain security. We'll have a quick break. I don't know, maybe we can go also directly to the second speaker, which is Emanuel Gonzales Carmona, coming from BlackDuck Portfolio. It's a very important company in the software in the cybersecurity industry. And he will present his talk titled Supply Chain, How Did We Get Here? Then there will be some space for panel discussion, question and answer, and of course the prize time. And then also sponsored by Kineton, we have some food and drink at the end of this event.
So the lunch is on you.
Sorry?
The dinner is on you.
Dinner is on us, yes.
So, I don't know how many of you are familiar with OWASP, but just wanted to introduce a bit the mindset. So, OWASP is a community, it's an open source community founded in 2001, actually in the US, registered as a charity foundation. And today it's present with its chapters in maybe more than 200 countries. So the mission is to make the application security visible so that professionals and companies can make informed decisions about application security. So it's about having a secure application and minimize all the risks.
The important bit is a community, and it's well, there's a lot of sponsors. It's a community, and it is meant to be vendor neutral, vendor agnostic, and we help everybody around the world.
So since November 2025, you can see there is a break point there. We added also the Tirana chapter, and so as you can see, there are more than 140,000 members, a lot of groups, maybe for the countries, are only 68 countries, not 200, sorry. Okay, OWASP by numbers. So usually all the members are volunteers. They volunteer to involve the projects, 200 plus projects, where you can participate, you can contribute, and you can learn by doing. There are also more than 1,000 leaders in different chapters. And then something very important is the global AppSec conferences. There are three main conferences, one in Europe.
So there's three main conferences. So there's the Global AppSec in the US, was just last November in DC. This year's Global AppSec is in Vienna. It's in the summer. And I think there is one in APAC, which I can't remember. But I'll let you know that.
The most famous project of OWASP is OWASP Top 10. Here we can have a list. This is the 2021 list. And in November 2025 was published a new one. And I want to just emphasize the there is a new category. So at the third place, you can see that there is software supply chain failures. It's the first time that this category is in top 10. Actually, is in the first top three, let's say, positions. Normally, all these problems were scattered in different, let's say, topics. Somehow, the supply chain, software supply chain failures gathers, and all the problems coming from the previous list. And then there are other projects, very important as well.
Related to this, you've got CycloneDX. So CycloneDX is the open standard for sharing SBOMs. We're going to talk about SBOMs, or software bill of materials, that become mandatory. And as Mario said, on supply chain, if you press the button and highlight it, but if the supply chain failures, never mind, supply chain failures, it's new. It was always there, just not as emphasized. It was used before, it was called using software with outdated components, and prior to that in 2013, using vulnerable components. But now, it's expanded beyond the components of the software, but also the software factory and a few other bits. And CycloneDX is a really important project related to the supply chain.
What's also very interesting is that from the survey, more than 50% of the professionals that it reported actually reported software supply chain failures in the first place. So it's something that is becoming more and more important. And all this material, also all this documentation, projects, events, are all for free. So this is a bit the main scope of OWASP. Are for free and for members and non-members, but to get full access and to get all the advantages, participate in this kind of events where you can learn by, top professional in the industry, is by becoming a OWASP member, and it's very easy, actually, where you can get a lot of advantages by doing networking, so you can connect to this community that is huge. It's a global community. You can work and participate, contribute in the different chapters or projects. Also in here in our chapter, you are welcome to contribute and participate in, for now, it's meaning that are pushing this initiative, but all of you, if you want, you can help us be part of this project.
Personally, what you would get though is your OWASP G Suite, so you get paid Google account for all the protection and all that stuff. Your Slack channel, as Mario said, you can participate. Emanuel also participated in a few around Europe, but so participate in the AI top 10 for LLMs, for example, wrote papers, and you get to work with experts. So you have quite a good lot of folks that are they started cybersecurity both around EMEA and North America.
And so this is the price for being a member in OWASP. So you can see for 1 year it's just $50, but for Albania, actually we have a discount. It's only $20. And if you want, I don't know, a lifetime subscription, it's for $200. So I think it's a good investment. And these are some of the platinum supporters. Here, we will not find clients in Albania.
You'd be surprised. So some of these we work with, we go through and all learn check marks. Outdoor and I think
This is the silver
you guys gotta change that.
category. Famous companies that we work with. So if someone with you is running a company and wants to become a corporate supporter, just talk to us and we will help you. Okay, so it's time again to scan the code. I know it works for everyone.
Sure, but do we need a Google account to get access to that, or I just need to use them?
If you want to join,
I joined them with just first name, last name without the Google account.
no, but you get a Google account. You get a name.lastname@OWASP.org email account. For this, I don't think you need to. As long as you know it's there. No, you don't need that.
You managed to write your name?
Yeah,
That's it. No email. We're not collecting anything. This is purely to the trust. Yeah. Okay.
So actually here I want to thank again Robert in Albania for the sponsorship and obviously also in Albania. We have this venue. The venue sponsor is Startup Albania, which is helping us to organize this event. It's actually the second event that we're organizing together with Startup Albania. We have Sarah here that also is helping us a lot. Something important, there is this London OWASP training days. It's from the 25th to 27th of February. And it's very interesting because I don't know if someone of you wants to participate, but you have a lot of courses, and you can decide to participate in just one day, or also there are some courses that last 3 days.
And the important bit is the people delivering these courses are people that actually might have invented some of this stuff. So the software assurance maturity model, Aaron, is the one that came up and leads the project. So it's not just training from tutors, it's from people that actually designed or created these. So if you're in London, please do join.
These classroom courses, or?
These are in person, yes. Yeah.
As I understand, if we are part of the OWS, with the fee, we participate.
You get
Charging this?
These are chargeable. They're extra fees. So they're hands-on workshops.
So you get a discount, but you have to pay for the
course.
Yeah, for the training.
This is special. The training days are special. The OWASP events are something different, and the local chapters are free. OWASP is a community. All pay is basically back into developing ASBS or dependency track or top 10 research, that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you very much. Just want to introduce, no need to introduce Nick, but I want to introduce actually our guest speaker, which is Emanuel. As I said, he's coming from BlackDuck software, and actually he's one of these professionals that has been in the industry for a long time, from important companies, combining very strong technical skills with, of course, he's a channel sales engineer at BlackDuck, so he has to be very good also in communication. So thank you, Emanuel, for coming today.
It's also great at picking up restaurants.
Okay, so Nick,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't need that. Need to sort it around. It's a little bit late, so I'm Kreshnik. I have many hats. One of them is to look after AppSec at IBM. And what I wanted to do today is, I don't think it's working. No. So I want to talk a bit about supply chain, and as we mentioned earlier on, so supply chain in this current form, we made it to the OWASP top 10 in November last year. So it's a big thing, it's a really big thing, because 3 legislations are coming online. One in the European Union, which was ratified last year and is becoming law on the 31st of January this year. and we're going to go through a little bit of what does that mean. But as Mario said, it was top ranked in the community. It's really important because what we had is being legislated towards it, but also software developers or companies that do software development recognize it as one of the biggest threats, and we'll talk about why that is. Also, it's not new, it just had new things added to it, and as I said, before it was purely using vulnerable components, now it's using vulnerable components, how you make those components. Think about it, if you're making, I don't know, a cake, it was using, I don't know, expired milk in the cake. Now is the process of cooking, the utensils you use, and all that kind of stuff. But all this relates to CWs, and if you're unfamiliar with micro, we can talk a little bit about what CWE means. Can I get somebody to press the button and do my code thing? Sometimes demo goals, but right. So I'm going to use some corporate slides, mainly because I want to show you a couple of bits. So ENISA, the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, estimates, or because of what they do, estimates 62% of attacks exploit the trust of customers they have in the software that they get. And that's really important. Anybody remembers what happened about May last year to Jaguar Land Rover?
The pagers?
Pardon?
The pagers?
No, not the pagers, don't get all political.
No, but that's a supply chain attack.
There was we'll talk, yes, there's a hardware supply chain, but well spotted, right? I was talking about Jaguar Land Rover and the 1.9 billion across the UK economy. That's a little big. So, and the reason for that was that it's purely a supply chain. Then there is the NCSC. This is the UK NCSC. It's a bit like NSA in the US. But all of these organizations basically say most of your attacks come from the supply chain because you don't know what you're building with software. Can we move to the next slide? We're going to move fast on this. Buttons already. Can we move on, please? Okay, one more. Right, so this is the big thing, and this is really, really important. So, and if you have to thank somebody who developed software for the European Union, I might be partially to blame, because I've been working with the European Commission and the Charter of Trust the last 2 years for this to take this current form. And essentially, this regulation, also now known as the Cyber Resiliency Act, makes it mandatory to secure your supply chain. Before it was good practice, you had to do it. Now you have to do it. And actually, you are banned from access into the common market. And what that means is, if you think about AliExpress toy that might be slightly radioactive, that's banned in the European Union, there's a CE mark, because there's a supply chain for that. And we're doing the same thing to software. Or products with software components in it. So, if you sell a TV, there's a smart TV and it has software in it, you have to have a CE mark, which means that you have to ensure the supply chain. We'll talk about that. And also, it's not after the fact, not, oh, I'm going to put these things in the market and I'll fix this later. From December 2027, the fines start, and you can't sell it in the European Union. The UK, yay, Brexit, is following up with their own law, which is pretty much going to mirror this, but it's going to double the fines because we need money. And the US is not that far behind, but what the US does is more advisory. Again, all the laws are coalescing the same thing. So this is really important. Any product, so whether you are, like Mario was saying, a car manufacturer, BMW or Stellantis or Ford, doesn't really matter. You have to ensure the software supply chain, and there is some obligations what you need to do. So, the shift is from voluntary to mandatory. And the scope is not just purely software, purely hardware, it's everything. And it's not just the component you use, but also how you produce those components. And most importantly, you have to support it. So you can't just throw something in the market, produce a piece of software, let's say Microsoft Word, and say, see ya, we give you support for a year, and after that is paid. No, you have to support it for 5 years. It includes security updates for 5 years. And you have to upload upstream an ESA for those 5 years. And you have to track everywhere that the software belongs to. Or it carries a non-compliance fine of 50 million euros, so 2.5% of the global turnover, whichever is larger. So, fun and games. Now it works. Okay, so what that means is, if you build software, which, how many here are developers? Right, so when you build software, about 80% of it is not yours, really. It's a bunch of libraries. So you have to ensure the supply chain of those components. You are responsible for those components. And you are responsible for the components of those components. I've got a nice diagram of that. And you have to support the software as you put it through the life cycle. Also, as a manufacturer, if you collect components, let's say you put a PCB, we have some embedded systems in it, there's some software in it, what you need to do is, you are liable for the software, for the vulnerable components in that software. So even if you assemble things from ready-made components, they're finalized software, you're still responsible. And the main thing, and as we mentioned earlier on, Cyclone DX. Anybody remember what Cyclone DX was? Cyclone DX. Cyclone DX is the common open source format for SBOMs, software bill of materials. So what that means is a detailed list of all the components. But hold that thought, because supply chain security doesn't mean I have a list of my components, like saying I have a list of all the cake with rat poison and radioactive elements in it. That doesn't mean anything. Just because you have a list, you are not compliant. You have to have a list and patch them. You have to track those dependencies and facilitate vulnerability handling. You can't say, hey, I've released this piece of software. There's no major hole in it. We mentioned SAP earlier on. I think the guys who work with Tech do SAP. So let's say, for example, you have SAP, NetWeaver, Jaguar Land Rover. You can't say, oh, there's a hole in there. You have to go and fix it, and you have to release a patch. And then, if you use it, then you have to also patch it. So it's not just what's in it, it's also the vulnerabilities, and you need to track and fix them, but also provenance, and we'll talk about that as well. Now, there is a nuance, because one of the key things that we discussed was like, let's say I'm a developer, and I do open source. I don't know, dependency track, funny enough, software that tracks dependencies. And I contribute to the community. Or think of Log4j, right? That was, hats off to those guys, I would never have done that at Christmas. 2 guys who were doing that, I would have been to the pub and said, screw you, see you later. If you want to fix it, you fix it, I don't get shouted for free. But anyway, so what these 2 guys did, they're contributing for free. Most open source is for free, it's contributed. So there is a nuance. They don't have to do it. So open source communities, you can't put liabilities on people that do things for free. Otherwise, everybody, you know what? I'm going to the pub, you go to whatever you like. See ya. So the law recognizes that and says, well, okay, you guys have some lighter obligations, you don't have to do this, because, again, for free, nobody's getting paid for it. But the moment you take open source software and commercialize it, so think about Red Hat. Red Hat takes, come on, what does Red Hat do? Linux, right? But Linux is free, the kernel is free. Mr. Toll I think, talking about it. So what they do is, they take it and commercialize it and put it as an enterprise software. Now Red Hat has to support it. So Red Hat, while it's an open source contributor, they write a lot of the Linux kernel. Because they commercialize the software, they have obligations to, and they assume full manufacturers reliability. So, what do we mean by supply chain? Traditionally, people think of software components, whether it is open source libraries, whether it is containers, whether it is other components, but traditionally people think of software components. Software components more than that. So it's the open source part of it. So where does it come from? We were working in this bank, it was a treasury bank actually, and what they said was, some developers said, okay, what is API testing tool? It's great, it does everything I want. It's like, right, and what are the contributors? It's 2 people. It's like, do you know who these are? Because 2 people contributing to the repository, they can be around by bus tomorrow. I mean, normally they were based in Spain, but they could have been based in St. Petersburg or in Beijing or wherever. You can't put that in a major treasury system because that's a bit problematic. So where is it coming from? There is the licensing. Everybody thinks open source means free. I take it, free stuff, and I can use it and make money out of it. It's not that. There is 3 types of open source. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And this guy here is going to talk a little bit about BlackDuck and how does it do their software licensing. Because it's really important, because you can't take somebody's work and make money out of it. And there is the GNU licenses, there's copy left, and there is use and reutilize, or use but not for commercial purposes, or use it and make it free to the community. And then there is the packages. NPM. Anybody use NPM before? Package managers, right? So you've got to be careful with that. So that's also part of the supply chain, because we'll talk about shiny a bit later. And last is the cryptography. So we're going to enter a new world, according to my model, that's the guys at IBM said that by 2030, the current cryptographic keys that do PKI are going to be obsolete because of quantum computers. So, well, let's go out the supply chain. So you've got to find out where all the cryptography is. The next bit, so you think of those are the components, the ingredients of making your cake. And then we have the CI/CD pipeline. That is, anybody use the CI/CD pipelines? Like GitLab and Rammers and that kind of stuff, or Jenkins or Slime. Okay. Well, first of all, if that is the ingredients, this is your kitchen. Where you take your ingredients and you want to know not only what components you put in place, but also who has access to your kitchen. Because if you have an open kitchen, and anybody can come there and start sprinkling rat poison, there's going to be a lot of dead people. Very morbid, but that's the point. So you've got to securely configure as your code moves from coding to PR, to build, to test, to runtime, and have the golden image and the golden source of truth. If somebody tampers with that, you kind of screw. And then there is the tooling. So we're talking about this particular tool that was doing API testing. We need to know where it comes from. And this is interesting because we enter in weird geopolitics. You know, it's called see the day the Americans might actually invade Europe, but that's a different story. But there is a lot of tools that are published that people use for testing, for security testing. So you've got to be careful now on provenance. The tools that you use in your pipeline to enforce security, are they going to do the testing as you want it to? Or are they going to bypass things? Or do they come with extra bits, extra functionality? So you need to be careful. And lastly is who has access, the secure access. We said there's a couple of developers. Who has access to your GitHub repository? You and only you. And why should I trust you? Because you shouldn't.
That's no, I don't trust it. I know some people can have. I mean, credentials are everywhere. So.
No, but this is the point. You shouldn't have access.
GitHub has access to my repository.
Your pipeline has access to your repository, but you shouldn't. So that's what we're talking about. Who should have access to the food being cooked? It should be automated, it should be outside. But so securing access to the code, securing access to your tooling is part of supply chain. We can talk about the finer points at a later date. And lastly, we're all doing vibe coding. Yay, Lovable, and a few others and a few other bits. But you've got to think really carefully, because guess where most of the code, like Anthropic, for example, it's really amazing at doing coding. Where do you think they get trained from? We discussed this last time. GitHub. Public GitHub. And what's public GitHub full of?
Stack Overflow. Yes.
Vulnerabilities. Garbage in, garbage out. This is all this IT. And also, you have to be very careful, because in theory, there is an attack that can poison the data. So if you keep putting a lot of crap in the public repositories, Anthropic and OpenAI is going to Google that, and this man is going to talk about it, how you intercept that. Because it's going to suggest you code with vulnerabilities. And actually really terrifying. But that's also part of the supply chain. And last is hardware. This is always like the black sheep of the family. Nobody cares about it until it's too late. But hardware is really important because you can secure the software that runs in it, but it's actually a backdoor right into the organism. Every software is going to run on hardware. The hardware is embedded problems. Come in, don't be scared. So provenance, and there is the whole point with Taiwan and China. Here's where most components get made, and you can have logic gates. They can be used in slightly different, peculiar ways. And we see this a lot with things that are smart and IoT, like solar panels, batteries, inverters, and all that kind of stuff. And even smart TVs and cameras. That's actually really important, really interesting case. The UK Parliament, interesting, they put Hikvision cameras, and we were all friends in the 2010s. And then they decided that probably Hikvision wasn't great to monitor all select committees and where all policies get made, because guess where Hikvision is from?
China, not the UK.
Not the UK, it's the PRC. And the risk was that, well, they're monitoring everybody. There's microphones, there's cameras, and there's just policy gets made, strategy gets made. So what they decided is to rip it out. 1.3 billion pounds. Thank you, Nick, pay for more taxes. And lastly, there's backdoors. We saw this in Oregon. There was a lot of solar panels that called home, and even had enabled Wi-Fi as you drive over. You hit them with frequencies. I remember 1957 US Embassy in Moscow, but that's a different conversation. Can somebody press that next one because it's frozen again?
There are some Chinese getting the information of your...
Right, so, a little bit in depth on the supply chain. So, first let's go snippets. When I was a young lad, when I was really, really small, I used to get my code from Stack Overflow because I'm that old. Some of us were, anyway. So, Stack Overflow, for those that don't know, is where you went and copied code snippets, and then you try and make it work. Pardon? Did they use AI, right? You got Anthropic, but... But yes, sort of. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, anybody could have posted a bit of code and say, hey, I'm trying to make this calculator. For giggles, right? Try to make this calculator. And somebody will post it as this is how you do it in Java. And if you didn't know much about coding, you copy it and you put it into the rest of your software, and guess what? You have now poison code. But code snippets are really important because they bypass your traditional checks. It's not like importing a library. You might have something like Nexus or BlackDuck or somewhere that checks the code as it's coming to your repository, your local repository. Somebody's bypassing all that, but just literally copying and pasting them. And the same thing is going to happen today with AI, with Copilot and Anthropic and whatever agents are there. So that's what we worry about. Please, go there. So, the next one is binaries, libraries, artifacts, containers. So these are components that I have shamelessly stolen that from my friends at BlackDuck, all this diagram. But so the binaries, libraries, and artifacts. You import libraries, right? You never write your own code, you never reinvent the wheel. It's basic programming 101. But all of these come from different sources, and most importantly, libraries pull other libraries. So you have something called transient libraries. So you can be about 12 libraries deep. It's a big rabbit hole. And you have to track all of those. Because the one that you import might not have the code that imports might not have a vulnerability. But there is like a vulnerability 4 or 5 lines down the line. And then you have containers. Containers are really important. So anybody makes microservices and builds things in containers? those base images, where there is Alpine, where there is Red Hat Atomic or whatever, how do you know first that that comes from Red Hat? How do you know what's in it? Because you're taking the container as this black box with stuff in it, and you need to check A for vulnerabilities and for provenance. And then everybody's favorite, package management. Let's skip this because Emanuel's got a lot of stuff on this coming on. No, it's not there. It's over there. Let's look at it. I think, no, don't do that. It's so first, really easy to figure out. Malicious code. Really easy why that's a problem, right? You got code, it does stuff. You downloaded something, or you copy some snippet, and that's created a vulnerability. Your device gets, or your software gets exploited. We see this quite a lot, actually, the same Treasury bank that I was talking earlier on. We downloaded a piece of a library to do, there's a library called Blurview. So when you take a mobile phone, there is a requirement that once you swap between apps, let's say you have, I don't know, Lloyd's banking app, and you have, I don't know, you want to check Instagram for reasons, whatever, right? So you want to flick between the two. The moment you flick between the two, you're supposed to, the requirements of most financial institutions is to blur the view. That's why it's called Blurview. Now that's a problem because that's a community edition. And what they've done was that very simple thing. All they've put in there is that we support Ukraine, yada yada yada. Okay, not political, but don't really care one way or the other at the moment. But it's that now is a message that gets displayed if you view this app in any region in Eastern Europe. Which obviously you don't want that to happen because that's not your thing, that's called protostware. So people can hide functionalities, can hide messages, and you need to check that. That's a malicious code risk. It's doing stuff that you don't want it to do. It doesn't have to be stealing your data all the time, just doing things it doesn't, you don't want it to do. The other one is, I'm going to talk across at the moment, is license risk. This is really important. So VMware thought they were really cool. They took some open source Linux, produced for their ESXi platform, and they thought, we're the big guys with lots of money. The community's never going to sue us. Well, the community did sue them because they said, well, actually, you're supposed to now make this free. This is the copy left in the GNU AGPL license. So essentially, if I as a community produce open source, and with the license, the AGPL license, you're supposed to use this and make whatever you build on top of it free. And you can't commercialize it for free. You can't commercialize it without making it free, opening it up. So VMware got sued and Tesla. There was a Tesla as well, same thing. Lastly, maintenance risk. Remember I talked about those two guys? I actually met them. This German guy and an American dude. And it was really important because they did Log4Shell, and we had this Christmas 2021 Emanuel, I think it was. So what happened was, a library got found, it had a problem, and it remote code execution, which is as bad as it gets in software, so opening backdoors, and it's the 21st of December. And the whole world goes to crap, and people are starting to complain, why didn't you patch it? There's two people. Well, there was technically four, but there's only two main guys. So that's the maintenance risk. Every time you use a component, you need to know how big the community is and how many contributors and how many commits they have. Because that's a commercial risk that you take. And last is the provenance. So this is, where is it coming from? So there's one, knowing where it's come from, but it's provenance and attestation. So you need to know that, are you connecting to Red Hat, or are you connecting to somebody pretending to be Red Hat? If you use Docker, a lot of people call it malware as a service, because anybody can publish with any name they want. You need to check those signatures. So, I got another one stream starting from BlackDuck, but 96% of all total code bases around the world contain open source. And it's interesting because industrial and robotics, Mario, because he cares about stuff like that, and automotive, they figure out quite big. No, these are libraries and components that are published for free, and you need to track them. But there is another problem here. I was talking earlier on about transit dependencies, and this is where the CRA, the European Cyber Resiliency Act, makes it your problem. So if I am here, and either I've got some tools that might have some microsoft components, this is difficult, but not really that difficult. You can figure this out. But the bit that you get from other people, how do you know that the components further up down the line and the service that I provide to you don't have those vulnerabilities? So that is covered by the Cyber Resiliency Act. So it's not just you are here and this bit that says organization. You have to maintain a view of all your components, basically the genesis. And you have to ensure those. And you have to report on the vulnerabilities that your products that you assemble and you sell in the common market. Last few more statistics, but this is really terrifying because half of all code bases in the planet have high-risk vulnerabilities, literally exploitable vulnerabilities. So there is no organization, or 1 in 2 organizations there in the planet, has vulnerable code that is totally exploitable. It just had their time hasn't come yet. And this is even bad, and this is bad, and this is what actually the European Union legislation trying to fix. That is this 4 years out of date. You got code with vulnerabilities published as CVEs, published in various sources. Nobody does it because, like Mario told me the other day, unless they're putting a gun to your head, nobody's going to spend money doing it. The gun to the head is the 50 million euro fine. And then he's doing it. All your ex-European Union market. And the UK, and the US federal government. And lastly, I was talking about these commits and how active the community is. 91% have components where nobody has done anything in 2 years. People have decided to move to the Bahamas and sit at the beach and said, screw this, or they did, or they just don't want to do it anymore. So there have been no active community, no active commits in that particular library. Which means the bad guys have found all the holes and they can exploit them, and nobody is actually patching them. Which the CRA says, well, now's your problem. You go and fix them or remove them. Jaguar Land Rover, most terrifying one for me because it's a well-known vulnerability in SAP NetWeaver. I have made much fun of my friend that works as a security architect there. And the idea was Jaguar Land Rover had their IT and IoT on the same network because it's really hard. You got to use those industrial plants. And those robots cost about 6 to 12 million euros, and it's not like you can go to, I don't know, Best Buy or Currys or whatever and buy one of those. You order them in Germany and they take 10 years to deliver, like buying an aircraft. So they had to shut everything down. So it's all cost to the UK economy £1.9 billion. 1.3 of those to Jaguar Land Rover themselves, the rest of it to ancillary producers. Because ships got stuck in ports, supply chains, and yada. The next one is NPM. NPM and Shiny Lou. This was so good that we had to have a sequel as well. So there was 2 of these. And the repository, Git, is a known source. What people normally do is, it's coming from GitHub. I'll use it. I'll take that. Don't take that. It's like trusting anybody on the street, or trusting your kids to get anybody on the street to get candy from them. Don't do that. You're supposed to know what they're getting. And this was exploited twice in the space of a month. And lastly, there was one called SolarWinds, which wasn't recent. But SolarWinds, for those that don't know, screwed the US government really up because it was found that all the software updates in this piece of software that was meant to secure their supply chain and their updates was infiltrated by Russian state actors and had a command and control of most US federal government and a few others. So, I like this one, but I've seen the latest one of these with whatever Microsoft is doing. But literally, that's that guy, there's those two guys, Log4j. Most companies in the world use Log4j. That, you remove that, breaks everything. Or if that's vulnerable, breaks everything. And this was a terrifying bit that those 91% having no update in 2 years is really bad because two people can decide they want to go home. Choose ones that have a commit every week. They have 18,000 contributors. But now the European Union is saying that we can't do, you want to do that, you start maintaining it yourself, you start committing yourself. But okay, fine, Nick, I'll buy this. Okay, what you're saying makes total sense. Where do I do this? And you do this at code. So when you start importing those libraries, in your ID, as soon as you import something, you want something with a red flag to say, don't do that, that one is, license is not good. It's got vulnerabilities in it. Maybe we suggest something else. You want to see it in the code. But let's say you went ahead and did it anyway. Then you're going to start pulling these libraries. You're going to pull other libraries. You're going to pull binaries. You're going to pull containers. You're going to pull all those sort of things. So you want a tool in your build as a quality gate. Use a CI/CD pipeline. Trust me, don't do it manually. To check all of these before you move. And this is where you build your first SBOM. What is it that you're building? All the cookbook, the ingredients in there. And you want to build that, and you want to have that because ENISA is going to demand it continuously. You start reporting the 11th of June 2026. Mandatory if you sell in the European Union. And also, you want to do all those bits of code, when you do your static analysis, those snippets that you got, your code pilot generated code, you want to check that. And it's going to be a funny 5 years coming because everybody says that we're generating code, right? Fine. And who does that belong to? The code you generate?
Everyone.
No. No.
Yourself.
Okay, so how AI works, very bland lines, but how AI works, goes and reads other people's work, and then suggests you regurgitates that.
Yeah, but it's refined to your need, your user.
Right, okay, let's go for that. But what happens when that looks 90% like the code that Red Hat has published, or is intellectual property of, I don't know, IBM or Accenture or Microsoft? And Microsoft for Copilot says we will do unlimited liabilities. I'll see that when that happens, so there's a court case. So you want to check the code that you're importing. Does it look suspiciously like something that somebody else's intellectual property before you embed it? Because once you embed that piece of code, so they build it like a skyscraper, and then finding out that your foundations are rotten, and then good luck removing those foundations from a building that already exists. So you want to know that. And all of this, you have to continuously maintain that. The Cyber Resiliency Act says you have to maintain the SBOM. So the SBOM is a list of all your components with their vulnerabilities, with their provenance, and their attestation. Attestation is really important. So not only where you got it from, but also what's in what you get it from, and that is free of vulnerabilities. It's really, really important. And lastly is cryptography. So as I was mentioning earlier on, by 2030, the current cryptography, the current ECDHE, and all of the traditional cryptography could, in theory, using one of the new, actually the Shaw's algorithm was published in 1996, that runs on quantum computers can break that, which means all your libraries that you use, like, tell me one library for cryptography, Emanuel, I forgot now. TrueCrypt? No, not TrueCrypt. Bannister Castle. That they use to create cryptography in your software. Well, that would have used old cryptography. So you need to know where those are, so you can update that, so you can also update the cryptography. So that's also part of the supply chain. There's a new term for it called SBOM, cryptographic bill of materials, and you need to supply that. And you need to supply that using, guess what common format? Oh, come on, guys, Cyclone PX. Okay? So, moving on swiftly. Then you supply, you're using AI. People are going to use AI applications. You're going to use MCP and you're going to use a lot of AI agents. But you need to know, where are they coming from? Only 25% of all AI models and LLMs are open, which means you know their bias, you know their fairness, and you know their training data. And we mentioned this last time. How do you know that that's going to perform the way that you think it's going to perform? This is all part of the supply chain. Because if you have an AI making a decision, it's probabilistic, it's not deterministic. It's going to choose whatever thinks is the best. And if you don't know what the data is, if it's coming from OpenAI or Copilot or Anthropic, that's okay. You don't know what they've been trained on. It's interesting because I had one of the police forces in the UK that said to me, we want to use AI for do the minority report thing. If you haven't seen the film, it's cool. So, do the minority report, and go, whoa, hang on a minute, that's a major dystopian thing there, guys, because what that's going to do is, how do you know where do you get this data trained from? Is it going to pick up a lot of people from different ethnicities and mark them for crimes before? So that's really important, and that is the supply chain. You can't have AI make those decisions, and you need to know where the data is coming from. There are models like Granite, for example, that can tell you exactly where the data is being trained from, but most don't. So that is part of the supply chain. Also, IP protection that we mentioned. How do you know the code that AI is generating? Where has it got that from? Has it got it from public GitHub? Has it got it from your own models, from your own repositories, which is kind of cool and is good? Or is it coming from poison data? So, quality gates, there's an SDLC for software, it's the same for AI. You still have to do the threat modeling, and this is part of the secure by design. Mandated, secure by design info by the CRA. You got to look at the sources. You got to basically tell the models that you take from where are they being trained. You got to ask. If you embed AI, you can't just say, oh, I've got AI stuff in it, I've got a sticker in it. Now I'm using an API to open AI, and I can sell this in the European Union. No, you've got to determine what's permitted and what's not permitted. And you've got to verify its provenance of the data that was used to train it. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit also on hardware supply chain. Because most of this software is going to run on hardware. That's how it has always worked. So we see this with counterfeit components. We see this all the time with SD cards or memory sticks. Yeah, 1 terabyte SanDisk for 12 quid. You know, alright. And you put it in and it's not bad, it's something else because you can kind of tamper with it. But they have hardware trojans. They have things that allow a backdoor access, especially on embedded systems. Especially on embedded systems on things like IoT, they're publicly addressable. You put a camera to view your courtyard because you want to see your neighbor's dog is coming to you over the fence. Well, that's publicly accessible. There's access to the network. And that allows remote access. But also, kill switches. We saw this in Sweden. Sweden bought a ton of about 120 electric buses from our favorite Asian supplier, the PRC, and they found that as part of the PCBs, they had a kill switch, so it can be remotely turned off. And we see this in automotive. Usually it's a race to the bottom. We buy the cheapest sensors and the cheapest components. And we saw this that's why we removed ZTE and Huawei, because we were worried that they had backdoors and people were spying everywhere. Jury's out on that because we never found them. But we found them on Cisco. I'm not saying that the others are not. We found them on Cisco and Juniper, so that's the same thing. But I'll put a list there, and I know that we're running way out of time, so I'm going to push on, but there is, as part of the CRA, you have to implement a hardware bill of materials. Essentially, where are your hardware coming from, what's in them, what's in the print for the logic board, and it needs to be free of vulnerabilities. And this is really fun and games because while software you can update technically every sprint, every 2 weeks, if you're really, really good at it, how often do you update hardware in smart meters?
The firmware of the hardware?
10 years. Never. Energy, and I've got loads of friends, by the way, that work in electric grids across Europe and North America, and I've been told 2 things: buy candles and food. Because you'll run out. Because we're that close to all those cascading down. Happened in Spain. Spain and Portugal, they were out of electricity for about a week. And they said it was a cyber attack, it doesn't really matter. One failure, because of one faulty component, took out the grid of Spain and Portugal. And it was really difficult to recover from. So the European now mandates a hardware bill of materials, especially in things like automotive, critical national infrastructure, and a few others. We also sign hardware, so trusted platform modules. Again, you can't just buy stuff on AliExpress, put it all together, and then sell it as a solution. And I know there's a lot of temptation because it's cheap, I'll give it that. But the problem is you need to know. And if you sell in the European Union, you can't. You need to do that. You can't sell to the federal government, you can't sell to the UK. Actually, the UK is put 4% of the national turnover. So where do I do the supply chain? How do I attestate? So this is our model. So everything that you input, whether it's application code, whether it's container images, whether it's workloads, config files, whatever, you need to scan them before you bring them in. And you need to have an internal repository where it's continuously scanned. Because what's not vulnerable today can be vulnerable tomorrow. And you can't put things forward. So once you bring things and you scan them, I'm good. No, you're not. You bring them in, and now it's always saying, do you have access to a repository? You say, yes. Then you shouldn't, because nobody should touch that. It's a bit like bank employees. If I work for the bank, so I'm going to the vault. So, no, you're not. Somebody has to check what's in it before you're allowed there. So you need to, the change control provenance, so who was allowed to access that repository, with what reason, and that's why peer reviews and pull requests and all that kind of stuff. And you audit. So yesterday we were discussing actually some GitLab monitoring use cases for the SOC, but it goes and says, well, anybody that forces a commit, anybody that does a commit without a peer review, all that kind of stuff. These are all part of the supply chain. If you don't have them there, it's a failure in the CRA, and you need to report on it. And that's before you even build anything. This is the code. And you sign that, and then you validate that signature for anti-tampering. Because somebody can directly go to the repository, done all the tests, and then write a new snippet in there directly into Git. And then you take all your dependencies. Again, same thing. You scan all your containers, all your libraries, all your images, everything that's got to run in it. And you have this built integrity. Nothing should be built manually. There is a pipeline that runs with least privileges. Yeah. Talk to me if you want to know more about it. And the outputs, once you build this golden image, then you sign it, cryptographically sign it with PQC, that's post-quantum cryptography signatures, with PQC, and that becomes your golden image with the digital signature. And if that doesn't match, you don't deploy it into production. And then, once you deploy it, you keep scanning, because what the European Union says, you have to, for 5 years, you have to alert all the authorities of any vulnerabilities that you found post-fact. And you have 5 years, and you have 5 years. You have to do it for 5 years, support the patching. It doesn't matter if you're not selling that anymore. So, hopefully we got the supply chain things out of the way. I'm going to leave you with some of the legislation. So, the Cyber Resiliency Act is an act, as in enforceable. ratified law in all 27 states, 20, I don't know how many, we're losing track, including Albania, because we are merging legislation. There is a bill currently in the United States, but that's the only difference between the UK and the EU acts, is that the United States one is not mandatory, it's advisory, unless you sell it to the federal government, which then is mandatory. The Cyber Resiliency Act to anything, whether you are selling a TV, a toy, or SAP core bank, doesn't really matter, everything is mandatory. And the UK Cyber Resiliency Act is merging the normal software and the critical software that the EU Cyber Resiliency Act into one. So it's mirroring the EU Cyber Resiliency Act, but it's adding some more penalties and it's adding simplifying a little bit. So basically it's taking the harshest approach. It's currently making its way through the House of Lords. I want to share this. This is some best practices on open source security. I'm going to leave you with this because I'm going to talk about the BlackDuck Security Advisory and some other bits. So yeah, thank you.
Emanuel, so the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, I have only 300 slides, so we will have a late dinner today. So quickly about me, I think the most important thing is the last bullet. Yeah, I really want to be a farmer and a distiller because I strongly believe that at some point AI will steal my job. So for now, I'm keeping it in the drawer, but for the rest of the time, I've been with BlackDuck for the last 4 years, taking care about supply chain, not only. So we were talking about a lot of open source in the last session with Nick, and he mentioned many things which are important, right? Open source is basically software which sometimes is misinterpreted. Open source doesn't mean free. Open source doesn't mean I can do whatever I want with that software. Open source is communities, are good Samaritans that start writing code, and that's beneficial for all of us. We have open source in our pockets, even if we do not realize about that. So really, the open source is everywhere. And as anything that humans will do, nothing is perfect, right? Nick touched base on the fact that sometimes the communities allow the bad guys also to enter. So there is no one actually controlling what is going on with the software. But where actually the open source started, you know this guy? Only one guy is nothing. So he is not Santa Claus. He is the father of the open source. So Richard Stallman is, I would say by mistake, the creator of open source. And everything started basically in the 80s. I was not yet born. But there was a community or a campus, university campus printer that very often got jammed. So there were terminals across the university. And this guy, with a lot of his friends, started to change the drivers of the printer, and they were able basically to broadcast somehow in the network, asking for, hey, if you are close to the printer, go there and unjam it for me, because otherwise it will take minutes to get there to the printer. And that's where basically the open source started, because a new printer was bought, driver wasn't open. They couldn't replicate this broadcasting capability. And the rest story, right? He created new 4 years after, and the Free Software Foundation. Now, the Free Software Foundation is like Liam Neeson in the movie, right? I will find you and get you. What Nick was mentioning about VMware, we don't care about a fair GPL license. We will use free software and we will not get harmed. Ask again, because this guy is like a pirate with a knife in his mouth and he takes you to the court. The Free Software Foundation does. Not only VMware, Cisco. Linksys was in Nick's slide. They really do. And that's fair, because when you adopt open source and there is a license is a contract. If you are not respecting that contract, then you should take your responsibilities. So since then, this has been, let's say, the story of open source. And we know Linux definitely has changed dramatically our technology. Our world today is powered heavily by this type of projects, which are open, not necessarily free, right? So Free Software Foundation doesn't stand for you can use it free of charge. It really depends, and the devil is always in the details, right? It depends how you use it and so on. So, moving forward, now that we know what is open source, let's analyze how the open source can get into your application. In the perfect world, you will definitely select it and explicitly add it. We are not yet talking about Cyber Resiliency Act, legal, or stuff. I'm talking as a developer. In the perfect world, I would like to select the components that I want to use in my application, and I should be declaring them, right? If I'm writing Java, I will be using Maven, or if I'm writing JavaScript, I will use NPM, Gradle for those that are using other languages, and there are so many, right? Any Windows developer in the room? Okay, so no one is using Nugget. Okay, but world is not perfect, right? Stack Overflow back then, now AI, that's definitely one source as Kreshnik was telling us, but there is more, right? Because the packages, you are writing your code as an application, maybe as a container, as a jar, as an Excel. You are shipping your application somehow. But once your application will be installed in a hosting thing, it could be a Kubernetes cluster, it could be a virtual machine, it could be something. You will be finding packages already there, which could be open source that gets in contact with your software, the thing that you wrote. There are so many ways that can be coming, right? The libraries. Maybe you are downloading an external library for which you don't have the licenses, or the, not licenses, the source code, right? Or last but not least, containers. All these vectors can allow open source to come in without you knowing it. And the way that you should be analyzing them, if you want to really go deep, should be in this way, right? Majority of the open source tools to control and generate SBOMs stop over here. So you go to the surface. It's like going to there's this meme, right? The guy controlling people getting inside the stadium, just doing like this, really not going to the X-ray. It's equivalent to that, right? If you really want to understand deeply what's inside your application in terms of open source, to really be able to calculate your risk, you need to go and cover all these kind of things, right? Right, so, now, forward. Why there is so much noise around the supply chain. Kreshnik gave us a very, very interesting read or examples of that, but I want to give you my personal take here, right? There is a growing snowball down the hill that has been creating this type of concerns growing and growing across time. We can start with the Equifax 2017 fiasco. One company, an American company, they were using well-known vulnerable Spring for Java, if I'm not mistaken. They knew it, no one cared, because there was no change window program to patch the application in production, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, 165 million personal records were exfiltrated. And some of them were UK and European customers as well. Then, 3 years after SolarWinds, we really don't know how many millions records and hijacked networks and exfiltration secrets happened, because as Kreshnik said, these were basically private and public companies, more than 30,000. The US had a really hard time, so it was somehow, you know, these penguins from Madagascar, you didn't see anything, similar kind of thing, right? We cannot really quantify how much that was. And basically what happened is there was one single open source component which was part of SolarWinds, which is a commercial software, supply chain attack. Pure. Another one, Log4j, Christmas 2021, bigger, 40% of the companies globally. That Christmas was not nice for those that are sysadmins or have to patch Java applications. And the important thing is to know how much the attacking surface and the TPSs that were generated by this attack are happening. There was around 1 million attacks documented in the first 3 days of the 0 day. That's huge. 100 hacks per minute. That means that it was a remote execution. It is. There are still out there applications in production with this thing. It's called now endemic, like diseases, right? You should not allow a cybersecurity threat to become endemic. You should eradicate it, right? But still, this is what is happening. And last but not least, Shaikulu, 2025, 1,200 organizations, more than 500 GitHub organizations, and this has been evolved, right? This type of attack was auto-replicated, warm style. It was really there was a fiasco, and as Nick mentioned, the movie was so good that we needed two episodes, September and November, because why? So chronologically, you can see, and these are just remarkable examples. There are so many more, right? I just took 4 because the slide was not big enough. But if we connect that to some of the legislations that are popping up around the world, you can see clearly how this is, especially in Europe, this is somehow connected, right? The ENISA, the ETSI, which are, let's say, the 2 European standardization cybersecurity entities, are talking about IoT security, cybersecurity, supply chain, and best practices on how to develop software since 2018, 2017. and evolving, or it evolved into the European Union Commission drafting for the very first time in 2022 the Cyber Resiliency Act. So that's, I'm not going to say it's proper, too fast, too slow, it's a fact. Nations or legislators are reacting to stuff that is really happening, right? And at the end of the day, the Cyber Resiliency Act cares about protecting the end users, us, which is finally something cool, right? I believe. As a user of technology, knowing that there is someone telling the manufacturers of the devices that I give to my kids at home that must be resilient and must be maintained, that somehow makes me feel protected as someone telling me to put the seatbelt in the car, right? Now, in the beginning, maybe no one was willing to put the seatbelt, and everybody was like, the seatbelt has a very high cost. Why we need to add the seatbelt into the car? I'm sure that the Volvos and the Fords were complaining about it, right? But then, what is the cost of the $1, $5 of the seatbelt to be added in your car when you need to pay $10 million of fines because someone died because of your neglecting these type of things? So we're getting into this. Time is short, so I will just focus on these two things, but the rest of the world is reacting to that. And what we have witnessed, like for example in GDPR, Europe said we want GDPR, and many other countries, Middle East or outside of the European Union or the North American, are copy-pasting those and make them even more aggressive. Not only in terms of amount of percentage of fines like the UK, but also on how hard they apply the rule, right? Like in the Middle East, there is no way you can use an external cloud which is not in country in that region. So these kind of things are definitely going to happen, but this is not the only thing, right? There are so many legislations, countries and organizations which are focusing not only the Cyber Resiliency Act. Cyber Resiliency Act has 6 exceptions, okay? Automotive, Navy, medical devices, defense, and I don't recall the others. Why? Because they have already other regulations which are stronger. Automotive has their own regulations, they need to enforce, some other type of security controls and so on and so forth. But those are not the only ones, right? Like the federal FDA, if you want to sell, for example, medical devices or software into the medical market, you need to comply with an SBOM. So Cyber Resiliency Act is the latest or the most deepest, if you want, but there are so many that are waking up. So again, if you think about the open source and what is going on, this is the reaction. So going a little bit more, in a nutshell, I think this picture is very clear. We will not eat any more Swiss cheese in Europe. This is a reality. This is coming from the European Commission, and I think it's very clear, right? You are not allowed as a vendor to put any software with known vulnerabilities in the market. You would be surprised how many times I've been talking to CISOs and they get basically blocked by CEOs, not allowing them to block this to happen, right? A chief security officer should have the right to tell IT, R&D, all his colleagues to say, stop, we are not going to put this product in the market because it's not secure. And the reaction was, those guys, R&D, were calling that, the CEO, saying like, hey, your security guy is blocking us the delivery, do something about it. So the CISO is there, powerless, and his buddies or his colleagues are putting that cheese with known vulnerabilities out there. But guess who gets the headache whenever they get hacked? So it's really interesting, right? So that was until yesterday.
I'm still tracking the cheese bit, because anyone that's worked as a CISO before knows the Swiss cheese theory from Lockheed Martin. The holes in lining, that's how you get to the end goal. So that's it. It looks funny, but there is actually a real theory called Swiss cheese theory. When the holes in the cheese align, then how an attack gets all the way. Yes, to the holes in the cheese.
The hazard is
So,
in the end.
Right. And we went around it, right? So I don't want to repeat anything that Nick said. I'm just trying to rephrase.
So what about
Most important. Sorry. There
No,
was
sorry, just wanted about the penalties now. So
about that.
the penalties. So how much the company has to pay in case it's not compliant with the because there was this 15 million that you
it's like
were discussing.
GDPR. So GDPR is 4% of the annual turnover, or 20 million, whichever is bigger. It was the same here. It's 2.5% or 50 million, whichever is bigger.
So a false statement penalty is up to 2.5 of your global revenue. So I declare I am compliant, but then I submit you with a fake documentation. I can get up to 2.5, and non-compliance is up to 4% of your global revenue. You can kill a company with that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that one important thing to mention, the applicability of the Cyber Resiliency Act is not only for Europeans, it's worldwide. BlackDuck is an American company, we need to comply with Cyber Resiliency Act. And we are more than 20 years in cybersecurity, and I have heard my R&D team leaders, colleagues, complaining about the Cyber Resiliency Act, asking to reply back and go to the European Commission that it is impossible to react and communicate to the CSIRT of the country. They have a new vulnerability within 24 hours. So if a company that exists because of cybersecurity reacts like that, I can only imagine what would be the reaction of any other companies getting Cyber Resiliency Act as an additional bureaucracy compliant headache, instead of embracing the fact that application security should be mandatory, right? Nevertheless, so SBOM is not the only thing that we need to comply when we are talking about Cyber Resiliency Act, but is a big part of it. The format of an SBOM is Cyclone DX or SPDX, but most importantly, we need also to address the CSAT and the VEX. VEX is basically vulnerability exchange. So you need to produce your SBOM according to the European Commission, which is a JSON-like kind of file with some specific type of rules to compile it, right? But at the end of the day, it's a JSON file. You take a picture of your application, you create your list of ingredients, and then you can map it into vulnerabilities, right? So I know these components, versions have specific type of vulnerabilities, I can tell you. But you are also allowed to tell everybody, I know I have this vulnerability, but I have patched it myself. Because maybe you have a orphan open source project. The two developers went to the Bahamas with Nick, and you have to patch it yourself, right? But you are not going to circle back that into the community because the community is there. So there is this kind of thing. This is the only addition that I have to add with to what Nick has already very well explained to us. And the important part is June 2026. We need to start. I say we as manufacturers of software. We need to start to let know the CSRTs how and if we are getting new vulnerabilities. So fines can get already here, right? There is a misleading expectation or understanding by some customers that I'm talking to around Cyber Resiliency Act, like, yeah, 2027 is far away. Not true. We are already here, and I can tell you that if you are not advanced in your application security or cyber security development, it's not a thing you do from today to tomorrow. Because it's not a technical thing only. It's not just using tools or testing. It's a mindset change. We need to move out to this. Tell the cybersecurity guys in Europe they are crazy because we cannot do it in one day. The question that we need to ask ourselves as software developers is, why not? Why we cannot make sure that the reaction of an airbag in a car will be less than 1 millisecond to save lives? Because the devices that we are putting out there, not all of them can, kill someone because of the device failing. But cybersecurity can create a lot of things, and those are the different types of topics. But we need to be more responsible as developers. So, medical devices, vehicle safety, aviation, marine, national security, and health data space. Those are the exclusions. There are four types of classifications. I believe that majority, 90% of the products will fall under the default. The rest of them are, more criticals. These guys are obliged to go through a third party to prove that they have done the needful. The default ones is self-certification. That doesn't mean that you can avoid doing it. That means that you can communicate directly with your CSRT, submitting your SBOMs, submitting your documentation. You are not obliged to go to DECRA, UL, SSG, or anybody else that will, audit you and give you the stamp. So it's an act which is different. Like NIS2, for example, was a European mandatory standardization of security for IT systems, but every member of the European Union have to take that text, make it a law locally, and implement it. The result is that in Spain has a name, in Italy has another name, and they don't match. Cyber Resiliency Act is different. Cyber Resiliency Act is mandated from the European Commission. There is no additional passage that needs to happen. And I'm not a lawyer, but this is my understanding. So, if we want to analyze it in a way, we are somehow extending the type of software development life cycle, secure software development life cycle that supposedly should happen. DevSecOps usually shows this as an infinite, right? And we usually forget about the sec. Now this is getting exposed or extended to the support period and the product lifespan. The monitoring and the reporting, according to my records, is up to 10 years, depending on the criticality of your product. 5 years is for the default. However, this is where we are. So it is not just how we are building the software, it is most importantly how we are going to manage our vulnerabilities, because there will be always a new zero day. Let's not be naive. Cyber Resiliency Act is not aiming to eliminate cyber threats. That's basically impossible. Sorry?
Luckily, otherwise we don't have any more jobs.
Exactly. Well, plan B, remember, farmer error and equal review, right? AI might steal our jobs at some point. Nevertheless, jokes apart, it's more how do you manage, right? If you are hit by a new vulnerability, you have 24 hours to let know, 72 hours to report, and 14 days to fix. So you need now to be cybersecurity aware or secure by default. Seriously. So that will change completely the way that we are seeing the market in terms of software. Because if you have a new vulnerability, now you need to ask yourself, did you fix it? If you did not, because this is not my project, this is an open source or whatever, you need to let know the owner. Maybe this is not open source. Microsoft has a model that you are using between your application, whatever. You need to let know Microsoft, and when the fix is available, you need to implement it. So this is easy. But what happens if you fix the vulnerability and this is an open source? So depending on the type of license, you need to help the contributor, you need to somehow help, but it doesn't matter. You will always have to let know the CSIRT or the ENISA to create an European vulnerability database. What is the normal way to identify a vulnerability today?
Testing.
Sorry?
Testing.
No, there is like, if I want to identify the vulnerability that was detected in the log from
Risk assessment.
CVE. The CVE is Common Vulnerability Enumeration. It's maintained by the MITRE. MITRE is a US government maintained database. His president, Mr. Trump, shut it down, MITRE, last year, few times recently, and we came up in Europe with no problem. We have our UEPT, and then Elisa was like, yeah, but still in testing there, so we are getting there, right? This is part of the single reporting platform that we need to go for when it comes to open source. So we cannot close our eyes and pretend we are not part of the supply chain, right? If you are the root, and if the root is an open source software community, you still need to somehow take care of it, right? And as you go in the supply chain, you will get the SBOMs from your third-party vendors, and then you are trusting them, but you will check them, because you really need to be sure that you don't want to get into the process of getting audited because you place it in a product which is vulnerable in the market, because the risk is high. So that's fine, perfect, I understand it. I don't care because I'm vibe coding. So vibe coding is not there. It's not going to help. Or it will not allow me to include open source. We already know that this is wrong, because it is proven that the AIs, LLMs, are creating code based on patterns. I asked yesterday, Jennifer, what is the probability for you to create code for me and it will include open source? He said 100%. Are you sure? So AI is great, guys. I'm using it. I hope everybody is using AI in this room, but it's not perfect. write it well. Anybody has tried to write an application with, okay, did you succeed the first time?
What?
Did you succeeded the first time?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So that's the point. And the reason for that is that AI is not always perfect. It's not deterministic. You can write the same ask. It doesn't matter if it's code. It could be a question. It could be the request for funny image with nano banana. You might not get always the same answer because it's not that deterministic, right? It's mimicking some intelligence. So you have the LLM issue, which you cannot neglect. It can make mistakes. It can be biased. I was reading an interesting article today regarding the bias in the LLMs. If you give to some LLMs pictures and you ask to make you look better, 7 pictures out of 10, if there is a woman and a man in that picture, the man will get less touching and the woman would look very much like a Kardashian. So that's definitely bias, right? We don't know what is inside the data. It could be that there are backdoors inside the data. If I create a lot of Git repositories with backdoors and SQL injections and God knows what else, the LLMs will eat it. And at some point, I will succeed injecting that type of flow into the code that someone will be generating. And there are also hallucinations, right? No one can prove you that the application that you wrote is resilient until you test it. So vibe coding is not eliminating the issue, is actually amplifying it, because the capability to write code from the LLMs is basically one programmer with LLM or with a pilot can write 10, 20, 30 times more code than a normal developer without. And that means that you are having much more things to take care. So statistically, internally to BlackDuck, we have been witnessing that they are good at avoiding some common weakness enumerations, right? Which usually humans are not. But they are not perfect. They are really good at adding this type of vulnerabilities. So the bottom line is that you still need to test the application. The OWASP top 10 that exists for many years is still valid. The reason for testing your application and the reasons for looking into how the code is being crafted and interacts with the rest of the things is still valid. The static application, which is basically consisting in analyzing the code and finding things that are not proper or not really secure, not recommended, still valid, especially now that we are having AI coding, right? So yeah, our world is changing, but at the end of the day, the security still needs to be applied. Intellectual property, there is 2 phases of that, right? One is maybe the LLM will add some snippet of a code which could be having a Chrome license, and then you need to handle Mr. Stallman with the Free Software Foundation, or the developers, in good faith, I'm sure, maybe we don't realize that when we are asking Claude to help us fix our code is going out. And that code could be under intellectual property. So there is these 2 risks of property, because until we will be in the stage where LLMs are running locally in our infrastructures, all the data that we are interacting with is going to the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, and the data centers that we don't know where
Copilot is
they
very
are.
interesting. So if you have Copilot in your IDE,
Right.
and you say, look at this folder where my code is, not only looks at the folder, but looks at the directory all the way up to read.
100%.
Does that up and sends it back, even though it's explicit told it not to.
100%. Right? So we need to take care of that. We can definitely, we have to embrace it, right? But OWASP has created a new top 10, the LLM top 10. Surprisingly, we have even more than 10, but we limit to the 10. There are two things that we can help as BlackDuck. We have been focusing: the supply chain, this is why we are here talking about, and the proper input handling. That's basically the new version of the SQL injection. We, as humans, are trusting blindly any output that we are getting from an LLM. So here we are talking about a developer connecting to an LLM and getting its output to elaborate or calculate or integrate it somehow. We are not sanitizing whatever is inside the LLM. Now, who's controlling the LLM? Maybe we can get some harmful or dangerous type of output. We need to sanitize also the inputs that we have. And let's face this, the AI models are the new open source guys. Everybody's familiar with Hugging Face? So this is from April 2025. If you go today, you will see that we are almost hitting 3 million. 3 million models. Some of them are released as open source. Some others are claimed to be open source, but you really don't see what is inside. But the reality is that Hugging Face is definitely one of the most important, is hosting all these models. And in some projects, we see some information about known bias, known hallucinations, weights of the data that we are using to train the model, and in some others we don't. So AI SBOM, we are getting there. We still don't have a regulation or legislation that will address it, but it will come at some point. Nevertheless, we need to take care of it, right? And that's part definitely of the supply chain. Even if the Cyber Resiliency Act is not telling it, or is not telling us to do it, we need to open our eyes, and as a cybersecurity oriented or practitioners, we definitely need to have a look. So, we are hungry. Let's go to the bottom line. I believe that there are two ways to see what is the Cyber Resiliency Act. One is the negative one, right? I am a software developer, I am an enterprise, I am creating products and I want to sell them in the European market. And Cyber Resiliency Act is just an additional bureaucratic and annoying thing as GDPR. If you do that, you might find yourself looking for the easiest path to go through and deliver a product that maybe will not hit the standards, and you might have fines or issues and stuff, but your life will be really, really hard, and it will be a nightmare. Or you can take it from the point of view like, hey, I get it. The European Union is trying to protect the end users. I'm trying to be political neutral, but one of the things that basically triggered heavily the Cyber Resiliency Act was one toy that was coming from the usual suspect, the red one. This toy was spying on kids, was replying with stuff that shouldn't be, like influencing with what type of movies can be done. My friend Carla, you can look it in the internet. The only country in the European Union that was able to ban that product from the market legally was Germany, because they have a specific law that if you have a spy device, you can cut it out from the market. The rest of the countries were not able to do that. So this is how good the Cyber Resiliency Act will help us to go and check that. So we can use the Cyber Resiliency Act as a compelling event to finally get the momentum, the management attention, budget, because of course Cyber Resiliency Act is a mandated thing, but application security or the security itself comes with costs. So we can embrace this as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm telling you for many years that the OWASP Top 10, in order to be compliant to the OWASP Top 10, or the best practices of software development, we need to do A, B, C, and D type of testings. Now you have the proper trigger to get that budget, to get that attention, and we have, again, as I said, right, I'm not going to read all the slides, but this is what I'm saying. I think, as a developer, that we are finally in front of a good opportunity to basically embrace the cybersecurity, which is something that we should be carrying. And we can help you with that, right? BlackDuck, Nick has been doing a great marketing during his slides, but we can help you end to end, right? We have been more than 20 years in this market. The BlackDuck supply chain solution, the software composition analysis, is the only tool in the market that can help you address all the vectors that I was telling you on how open source can get into your software, including AI, because we analyze also snippets. And we have added as well our agentic solution to test your software. Now, why this is important? Anyone can ask Claude or Copilot, okay, you wrote the code, now you test it, and you tell me if it's secure. I want to be compliant to Cyber Resiliency Act, show me. Now the problem is the data. We have a 20 years experience and database which is not biased. It's compliant to the OWASP Top 10, it's compliant to MISRA, it's compliant to SSDFs, and so on and so forth. So this is the new value that I see when it comes into how to monetize your data. This is one very good example of it. So Signal will allow you basically to analyze code using AI, which is not deterministic. It's basically like grabbing your application, giving it to Nick, and Nick will read it, and he has more than 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, and he will give you his feedback, like, you know what, I think you have an SQL injection here, I think you have that. Then you can give that to me, or reanalyze it, and being not deterministic, we might find different things that the tools cannot help. So what I'm saying here is, AI is not just negative. It's definitely enhancing our capability to write code, but we need also to leverage it to go with vibe security, not only vibe coding. And with that, if you have any question, I'm here. If not, we can go and have some additional talks or drinks or whatever.
Okay. Yeah. So I was going to help us in order to spin the wheel. I hope that everybody has his name registered. Raspberry Pi or the NIC?
Do the Raspberry Pi first.
Okay.
Check. Everybody see their name there? Wait a minute, it's missing. Right. Cool.
Spin it. Yes, Raspberry Pi. Here's
I'm going to offer something. If someone wants to switch for the sunglasses.
Absolutely.
Thank you. The first time here. Okay, come again next time and you can win the rating.
Maybe I come back?
Yeah.
Right, try it again. Second time, this is for the glasses.
Vai nel culo, voglia te.
Telecinque materiale, telecinque.
Andrea, push Andrea.
Dottor Gruscio, abbiamo un.
Ah, il Andrea. Okay, and here's pizza del Tirana. So some pizza, some food, and beers.